Welcome back to Strong, everybody. I'm so excited to bring an amazing panel of speakers. Tonight, we're going to be talking about exam stress, and we're going to be zooming around the world with these three incredible young women. We have, give us a wave, ladies, when you hear your name. We have Lauren, who's zooming in from the UK. We have Nayantara, who's zooming in from the US. And we have Nada, who's zooming in from Egypt. And tonight we're going to be sharing our experiences. And I'm saying our because I'm also currently studying and I do feel this exam stress. And I'm also going to be playing the part of a parent on this panel as well. And we're going to be talking about what it feels like to have exam stress, what that looks like in the eyes of a young person, and the kind of impact that it has on the well-being of young people. And it was really important to get a scope of young people from across the globe, because what we don't want is to limit ourselves to thinking that exam stress is only prominent in one part of the world, which is what's amazing about tonight, that we're able to bring in three perspectives. Of course, they're not the perspectives of everyone around the globe, but in the experiences of these young ladies. So let's go around the table and quickly introduce ourselves and tell us why you decided to join this panel tonight. Let's start with Nada. Nada, welcome to Strong. What brings you here tonight? Why are you wanting to share your experiences?
I think exam stress is a large topic we are all suffering from on various levels. And sharing my experiences would say to a lot of people that I am okay, that I live that in a very stage of my life differently, of course, like in middle school, in high school, in college, and now I'm a master degree student. So we all have different kind of exams that we pass, and it's natural to have this stress feeling. It's completely natural, and it's okay to talk about it.
So much, Nada. Lauren, what brings you here tonight? Why do you want to be sharing your experiences?
I'm very similar. I've had a lot of exams. I've got exams coming up shortly as well. And the impact that it can have on you mentally, but also physically as well, kind of in the revision and studying up to it. And then also the actual kind of about to sit the exams itself, it can really like take a toll on you. And I think it's really important to really talk about our experiences and make sure that everyone knows that they're not alone in the way that they're feeling just before an exam or even after an exam. So I think it's really important to talk about. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Nayantara, why are you here? Why do you want to be sharing your experiences?
Yeah, so I think my reasons are quite similar to Lauren's and Nada's. I think as we go on, exams are becoming more and more large parts of our lives. So maybe before, for my parents' generation, it wasn't as much like this, but I think when you're comparing yourself to your friends and you kind of go into these like exam bubbles and school bubbles of exam stress, you can kind of like rearrange your entire life around these exams sometimes, which is what you hopefully want to avoid. And a lot of stress comes out of that. So I think I'd like to share my experience with how I'm trying to move away from that productivity bubble and really make it more a balanced part of my life rather than focusing on that exam completely.
I'm so happy that the three of you are here this evening. Being an educator myself, this is a topic. We talk about this all the time in schools, especially around this time of the year when we're preparing young people for those final end of year exams. Now, because of the pandemic, many countries around the world have decided to opt out of final exams, but there are still exams being passed in a school system, but not on these national levels. Now, what we want to be talking about is how does exam stress look different in different parts of the world? And what I'm most interested in is what do we have in common, regardless of where we live around the world? So Nada, you mentioned that your experiences from being in middle school to high school, and even now as a master's student, there are differences, but there are also similarities. Can you talk us through what some of those academic experiences were for you when you were in the younger years of your education?
In middle school, I was playing volleyball and just studying. So I only had two things. So the time management skills wasn't that good, or it was okay. I only did two things in my life. When I went to high school, I wanted to go to a very, in Egypt, our education system is quite different. In order to go to clinical pharmacy, I had to study a lot. I had to do nothing in my life except studying, especially for the last high school year. So I only had to study and study and study and study all the time. So I got really good grades. I was the 10th on my school. After that, I joined college where I was more interested in the extracurricular activities. So I had only to study when the exams were a month away. And after that, right now, I'm a master student degree, so I do a lot of work. I work in two jobs. And of course, my studies, so they require more time management and more time skills. It's not like the middle school or the high school. Now I require more focusing in what I'm doing because I work and I get paid, so I need to have like the perfect work to deliver. And then my studies also has to be good in order for me to continue further.
Like how you've taken us through not just the types of academia that you went through, but also the mindset and the requirements for each of those things. Nayantara, can you remember being in middle school, and can you remember what that was like being that young and having to take exams or having to go through that academic system, and then moving yourself forward to your current day? How is it different?
Yeah, so for me, I think what you were mentioning about how exam stress is different in different parts of the world, I experienced that because I did primary school in Germany, and then I moved to the US just before I started middle school here, so 6th grade. Then I did middle school here in the US, and then I moved to Chile, where I lived for 5 years, and that's where I did high school. And I think coming from Germany, where up until like 3rd grade, we get one end of year report card. It was based purely on participation it was in 2 subjects, German and math, and spend most of the day outside learning very holistically. And so coming from that to the US, where it was, you have the same 6 classes every day in 6th grade, you'll get 30 minutes of break in between, US public school, I think that was a big change. And I remember it was the first time that I kind of came across this concept of exams, like tests, things like that. I didn't really understand it before that. And I remember having friends who were in after school tuition, like getting tutored to do different tests, English, reading comprehension, and like standardized tests. And I didn't study. I think all throughout middle school, I think I really didn't care about exams because I didn't understand them at all. And I just kind of listened in class, came home, and then I did whatever I wanted to. I read in my free time and I played outside. And then I moved to Chile. And when I came here, I started realizing that I would have to work hard to study at a university abroad, to get into a university abroad. I joined a school where the IB program is basically what everybody does. And I started to realize, because I was in a bilingual school, I had to do all of it in Spanish. So I had to learn Spanish while I was doing my classes in Spanish. And that's when I really did like a 360 turn, and I started to study all the time. And now I think I found like a balance. So I think I've also kind of changed based on the country. I think coming to the US, there's a lot of like work culture, hustle culture here. And in Chile, it wasn't necessarily like that, but bringing this culture into that environment, I kind of ended up doing the same thing.
How about Lauren? How about in the UK? What's it like in the UK? We've heard the system in Egypt. We've heard a great summary of the differences between Germany, Chile, and the US. What's it like in the UK?
In the UK, it's actually quite similar throughout. You always have that kind of pressure right from kind of when you're really, really young. You have kind of these things called SATs when you're literally maybe about 10. And then after that, it's like exams every single year. So it's always kind of the end of the year, maybe a few years where I didn't have to sit like a big group of exams. So it's kind of like a continuous thing, really. And then sometimes there's coursework, which is kind of like writing out big essays, and you have a few weeks to do that. But really, it has been very, very similar for me, right from secondary school through to college, and now I'm at university. So I think it's really different, actually. It's really interesting hearing how it's different across the world, because I think in the UK, it's very much exams, like, and tests all of the time. So I do think it is quite different.
Feel like? Or what does that pressure feel like? So I want to put it into context now. I really appreciated seeing the differences in the different countries, or having a glimpse of how pressure increases as you get older, and even how it's different from country to country. My question now is, there's somebody watching this, either a parent or a young person, and thinking, you don't get me. I don't know what that feels like. You know, it can't be as hard as what I'm feeling. So take us through what it feels like, and take it through your eyes. So your experience will really be different to somebody else's experience. But what we want to gain tonight is an insight on how it can look different, so that somebody watching is going to be able to align with what they're hearing and feel like, oh, I'm not the only one. And I think this is really, really important. Nayantara, let's start with you. And I liked how your younger years were in Germany. And I think that's a time when most parents would wish that their children have that freedom, that fun playfulness. And I know, Nada, that you described that time playing volleyball and studying. So there was an element of non-curricular. Lauren, you talked about always having that exam stress, even from your elementary years. What does stress look like through your eyes, Nayantara, when you're thinking about an upcoming exam, or having to prove that you've studied enough or done enough, and you get tested on knowledge?
Yeah, I think my memories of exam stress really come in high school, and I think there's multiple faces to it, because depending on the school you're in and the relationship you have with your teachers, your experience can be very different. I think in Chile, in my experience, and I think in other places around the world it might be similar, we had quite a close relationship with our teachers, which meant that so in the same class, the teacher might lecture for 30 minutes, and then they'd come sit down with us and they'd say, let's take a 15-minute break, but it would be to gossip with us about what was happening around the school. And so it was almost like a teacher-student relationship, but also a friendship, and that was positive in some ways, but also in other ways it meant that they kind of, not favorites, but they would have expectations for students. And I think that can cause a lot of exam pressure. So for example, if a teacher comes up to you for a class, and that test, that exam for that class is evaluated externally, like I did the IB exams, and those exams were not evaluated by my teachers. And if they say, I'm counting on you to get me the 100% or the 7 for this exam, I think that causes a lot more pressure than what you maybe would already put on yourself. Or, I mean, pressure can come in other ways as well. If you're in a friend group where everybody's really driven, then you can you might study together, and that might be a really positive thing. But then you can look at one person being distracted during the study session and think that you were more prepared than them, and then they might get a higher score. So that friendship can also create pressure in a way, which is not what you would ideally want from a friendship. So I think exam pressure, I just remember it coming in all different ways. And sometimes when all of those different ways come together, that can be quite stressful.
What did it look like? Let's have some physical characteristics now so that we can see and really begin to resonate with that exam stress. So you talked about a few things, from expectations to make your role models proud of you or to live up to their expectations. You talked about peer comparison, your friends doing well and you wanting to maintain and kind of keep in that circle, and then your own pressure, your own expectations of yourself. So were there any physical characteristics or emotional characteristics that you could identify as only happening when that stress was really high?
Me? Should I? Yeah, I think physically, I mean, I remember just before my IB exams, like the big exams that count for basically whatever you're applying to university with, I remember experiencing a lot of hair fall. Like if we want to talk about like really physical manifestations of stress, I remember just sitting for long periods of time and then standing up and seeing a lot of my hair had fallen. Or I mean, like other ways stress manifests, acne and like lack of sleep and just being really fatigued and exhausted all the time. And then also sometimes you go to school in the morning and you kind of look at your friends' faces and you've experienced the same level of stress, or you've had the same lack of sleep the night before because you've all been up studying. And I mean, it comes in a lot of ways, but those are some of the things I can think of.
Thank you so much for bringing those up. It's important that we're able to be really authentic about those experiences, and what you described are definitely characteristics of descriptors that I have heard. Lauren, would you say that your experience of stress is similar, or if it's different, how does it look different for you?
Mine is quite similar in terms of like a lot of my friends around me feel a similar way, and also things with feeling tired and not being able to sleep for me. But mine is also very different in terms of how anxious I get before exams. And at the moment at university, we have exams that are about 2 to 3 days long, and that constant level of high stress has been very, very hard. So for me, I will get migraines, I'll feel really sick. So it's quite like very, very draining and very hard in that aspect, and also trouble with eating, sleeping. And yeah, definitely in the lead up to exams when I'm studying very hard, it's definitely become harder and harder as the years have gone by, as I've known how much more important the exams have got. So now I'm at university, I know they're very, very important. So I think the stress kind of levels have definitely got worse for me, but definitely the physical impacts it does have a massive impact on me, and it does make me feel quite ill. And I always know it's the exams, because as soon as they're over, that kind of feeling is gone. And I almost feel like I need to go to the doctor because I have so many headaches and feeling ill. And then as soon as it's gone, as soon as the exams are over, it goes. So I think it is really important for everyone to be aware of these things, because I think people can think you're sick, but it is the stress that exams can cause. So I'm very excited for them to be over, because I'm kind of in the middle of that stage at the moment, migraines and things like that. But yeah, it definitely is different for everyone, but for me, that's the way that it manifests.
Nada, you've heard Nayantara and Lauren. Would you say that your experiences are similar? Do you have very similar characteristics of stress? And if not, how are yours different?
I have similar characteristics, of course. My hair do fall a lot. But I directly before an important exam, I get really some bad abdominal cramps, but they immediately disappear after the exam or during the exam itself.
So I'm listening to the three of you, and I'm a parent. My daughter, who was a university student, really suffered with anxiety, especially around exam time, to the point where it became so overwhelming. It took over her life and her enjoyment of what she was learning. Would you say that this kind of stress detracts from your interest in what you're learning, or is it a motivational factor for you to keep wanting to go further? Because it's almost a double-edged sword. The stress brings on physical and mental health issues, but at the same time, the success in getting through the exams is kind of like a dose of, oh wow, I'm successful, look at me, I'm doing really well. Lauren, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree with that. And I think it's very two-sided. So for me, I will really think this is worth it. This is worth it, what I'm going to get out of it in the end. But especially when it makes you physically feel quite ill for sometimes weeks, for me, sometimes months at a time in the last few months of a term before exams. And it can actually cause me, and it has definitely the last month or so, to fall behind on my work because I've been feeling so ill. So it's definitely been I was spending a lot of time trying to catch up. And I think it definitely does take away from my enjoyment of my subject, because I study law. I absolutely love law and I can't wait to be a lawyer one day. But it definitely takes away from my love from the subject when am falling behind and I am feeling ill. So definitely, and it's hard to get that balance, but I just have to keep reminding myself of that every day, what the end goal is for me.
I like how you're bringing in, I like law. I can't wait to be a lawyer, but it is taken away from my interest and my desire to learn this. Nada, you want to be a clinical pharmacist. You're doing a master's degree. You're working two jobs. Do you feel that the stress and the pressure around exam time is taking away your interest of learning what you're learning? Or is it a driving factor that makes you want to do even better?
No, never. It's a driving factor, of course, for me. You have to set a goal for yourself and you have to work really hard in order to get to that goal. And that's actually what I'm trying to do here. I'm working two jobs and doing my master's degree. So it's quite a lot. But of course, it's a balance. You have always to balance. You have always to know when to take some time off. I don't know, maybe go visit a nice place you wanted to visit, go to a cafe, meet some friends, um, read. I don't know, you have to find your own escapism and try to get it once in a while, of course. Balancing is a very important factor here, and you have to have faith in yourself and you have to be well prepared, like usually well prepared. And of course, all of these can be done by some time management skills.
Thank you so much. We're going to come back to this one, Nada. Nayantara, how about you? Do you find that the anxiety, the stress, the rush is a driving factor that motivates you to want to learn more, or is it taking away your desire to learn more because of the anxiety?
I think a bit of both, but I think there's really fine lines, because for me a lot of times I don't even see my performance on an exam as like a central part of the learning process. I kind of see exams as like one of the hurdles I have to cross to show somebody else that I've learned something. But it doesn't even, a lot of times I'll prepare really well for an exam, and then the exam will ask me a question that is so much simpler and so much easier to answer. And I have all of this other preparation I've done for the exam, but really that just ends up being for me, like it's a lot of times I don't really believe that exam stress and that my performance on that exam is going to make me better at what I'm doing, if that makes sense, or if what I want to learn. And so I think there's also another reason why it can take away from your passion for what you're learning is, I think there's this really fine line of studying a lot because you genuinely want to understand the topic better, because you want to know more, or studying a lot for an exam to prove to yourself that you tried your hardest. And I think there's a lot of people generally in the education world, I guess. I think a lot of my teachers have told me this, a lot of my parents have told me this, and I'm sure at the start I said this myself a lot, that you have to try your hardest, you have to do your best, you have to work as much as you can to do your best for this exam. But then I think when you think that so much just before an exam comes up, you can get into this space where you do everything you can to convince yourself you tried, but then you end up studying in ways that are not actually helping you learn. You're studying in ways that you've seen other people study, to kind of tell yourself, I did all of this, I invested all of this time, so I must do well, or I must do as well as I could have, not necessarily thinking of ways in which you learn best. So when you get into that space, and it's really easy to get into that space, then it can be kind of hard to keep your interest for the subject, because you're thinking more about putting in the hours, not effectively learning. Yeah.
Really interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I want to kind of bring it all together. Nada, you were talking about, it comes down to time management, working at your hardest, and finding your way to escape moments where you could just balance the well-being. Now, one of the things that I have heard many, many times, both as a student, as an educator, and as a parent, is this concept of, it's kind of like education is a rite of passage to your future. And any successful person, and I'm saying this in air quotes because there's no empirical evidence to back this up. So this idea or this concept that the harder you work, the better you do, the more successful you'll become. And I'm wondering, is there any truth in this when we're sitting exams that might not have a bigger purpose? And I'm not saying this because I want young people not to do their best or study their hardest, but what I'm really asking is, when you're in this stressful environment, when you're putting this together, what do you tell yourself that makes you believe that the stress is worth the effort, and the effort will have a return on investment? And if there is a return on investment, what is that? Is it the grade that tells you you're an A student? That means that you're smart. Is it the making somebody that you look up to feel proud of you that makes you feel worthy? Or is it that society tells you that you have to work hard, that you have to do more, that you have to be the best? And by doing those things, that you then tell yourself, well, I've succeeded. So what I'm really asking is, what do you tell yourself that makes you believe that the stress is worth the investment, and that the return on that investment, your time, your hair, your acne, your abdominal pain, is worth whatever it is that you're putting yourself out there for? Let's start with Nayantara.
I think so now I'm about to finish my first year of university, and I think, to be honest, with all of this online schooling and everything, I haven't felt so much drive to I mean, I just kind of prepare for my exams, but I don't actually, it doesn't register in my brain that this is an actual school year and that I'm part of this bigger university and that I have classmates. All of these things don't really register for me. So I think I can talk more about, again, the IB exams in high school. And I think what I told myself then when I was really like 14 hours a day on my desk, and I thought I had to sit 14 hours a day to, you know, if I don't spend this much time, then I won't have any, I don't have any reason to feel bad about myself if I don't do well. So it's kind of like making sure you tried your hardest. What I told myself when I was really not feeling motivated in those moments was, I think it was a matter of making people proud and validation somewhere that is always there. I would be very envious of people who don't have any sense of validation driving them at all. But I think a large part of it is also identity after a while, like when the drive from your genuine interest to learn, when that goes away. So when you're really tired and you can't find that drive in your interest, and you can't find that drive in proving something to yourself, it kind of just becomes keeping up like a track record sometimes, you know. It becomes, you've spent 2 years studying this and all of the mock exams you did were so good, so you just kind of have to keep at it and you have to finish it. I think I realize now that a lot of times when I was at that point where I was almost like I really didn't want to keep studying anymore and I didn't think anything was effectively entering my head, the things I would tell myself, they're kind of like little lies you tell yourself to just kind of push past that limit. But looking at it now, I don't know if it's worth it. I think first, it depends. I think you have to be very strategic with your hard work. So work smart, not hard. And I think for some programs, like where the exams are really important, it's really important to study for those exams. But I think for me, what I'm scared of losing when I push myself so much at that point is you kind of lose this bigger picture perspective. You might risk losing your like unique outlook you have on the world, or your passion for the subject, or why you think it's important, and like the information you find when you read in your free time. If you study so much what everybody else is studying and you don't read that book in your free time that gives you a unique look on that, all of those things are maybe even more important than just that one exam. So I don't know if I would do that again.
Would you say that the exam anxiety, the stress, the physical challenges that you face are worth the effort based on what you will gain at the end of your degree?
For me, yes, definitely. Because I've kind of, in law, you have to kind of be, well, in England anyway, for me at my university, you need to kind of apply for firms very early. So I've kind of already got a firm that I'm going to work at, hopefully. So for me to get those grades, that'll get me straight into that career. And I think it's a very high pressure and very competitive career to go into. So I think that makes the exam stress worth it, because I will kind of go straight into that career. I think for someone who maybe doesn't know what they want to go into after university and after their exams, it may be more difficult and to kind of see why is it worth it. But I think personally for me, I know why, just because I'm set on that career. But I don't think it's important to know exactly what you want to do. But I think it can help definitely see the bigger picture of why you're working that hard and why you're putting yourself through that. So yeah, definitely personally, it is worth it.
Nada, I'd like to go backwards on something you mentioned right at the beginning of our interview when you were introducing yourself. You said that in your middle school that you had volleyball and exams and studying. And then in high school, it was studying and that was what you did. And now you're working two jobs and you're doing your master's degree. I'm listening to you, or I was listening to you and thinking, where did your youth go? Do you ever look back and think, was that exam worth it? I've lost the youngest years of my life, the time when Nayantara, for example, was playing outside and not really having to worry about those exams. Do you ever think back and think, that was too harsh and I was too young. I wish it could have been different?
No, no. As I mentioned before, it's all about the goal you set to yourself. I don't know. I want to be a specific thing. I want to be a researcher, for example, researcher in biotechnology. In order to get to this, I need to read a lot, conduct a lot of research papers, and they need to be published in good journals. In order to do that, I have to work hard on myself, and of course, work smart, as Nayantara said. So it's all about balancing, as I mentioned before. And here, I also go to some places. I go to the gym usually. I go like 2 weeks, 2 times per week to the gym. And when I do have a lot of negative energy, I expel them through workouts. So this is the time management or the balancing I'm saying. You need to have some escapism strategies, and you need to have your goal. Your goal had to be set ahead of you every time, and these escapism can be lived once in a while. For example, 2 hours per week, or 4 hours per week, or 1 hour per day before bedtime. You can read your favorite novel, or watch a film you want to watch, or a movie. You can do various things that recharge your energy, so you can continue your path, or the path you set for your goal. So this is completely important for me.
I'm I'm really humbled to hear all of your experiences and how you view your social context and how you view the world through your eyes. And I think this is really interesting. And it's important to remember that there's no right or wrong. I don't believe that one person's experience is the status quo and that's what we should be doing. Tonight's about learning and understanding how it's different. So there's a young person watching this that is struggling. A few of you have mentioned, or a couple of you have mentioned, working smarter as opposed to working harder. So give us some tips. How do you work smarter when the pressure is on really high? What does working smarter look like through your eyes? Nada, I heard you saying time management is really important, having your eye on the goal. So when you're sitting in front of your work documents or your study documents, how do you structure yourself so that you know that you're working smarter?
Okay, I usually study firsthand. When lectures are here, I study them, because this gives me a feedback about the topic we are studying. Of course, I don't remember at the end. I have to read the lectures or restudy them. But this, of course, gives me like a feedback of what is going on, or what we are having to deal with, or what we are required to have knowledge about. And then your work have to be finished as soon as possible, of course. And you need to be more. In Egypt, we have this strategy that we know this professor will ask about this specific topic. So we tend to I don't know, like, know how he thinks, or how he or she thinks about the exam, the question banks, of course, and etc. We need to study these, and we need to study the curriculum. The curriculum will be studied. Of course, it will be studied, but we need to focus more on the question banks or the questions they like repeating exam by exam or year by year. And this is the work smart strategy we have in Egypt. That's I don't know if it's cultural or you guys have them in your countries or not, but this how it goes here.
Saying that not only are you creating your own strategy, you're also learning how to read the professor and understand the expectations of the professor. That's very, very interesting. It sounds very much like mock exams, Lauren, would you say? Over in the UK, I know that you guys do a lot of practice tests and you're practicing for the main test. Would you say that that's a method of working smarter, or do you have other strategies?
That's definitely a way that I do work smarter. So I'm very, very similar to Nada, where I study throughout the year as I'm getting the content. So with the lectures, I do make sure I make flashcards, posters, all the way throughout the year. I really enjoy doing that because it's quite creative. I use a lot of colour and things like that. So I find it quite fun to do. So for me, it's almost like a hobby. I'll draw pictures on them and things like that. So that brings enjoyment into it, but that also means I don't have to do that at the end of the year. So that's definitely a way that I try and work smarter rather than having to kind of cram all of that into the end. And for the mock exams, I revise for them as if they are the real thing. And that's what I always tell to people who kind of ask about any advice to do with what to do at college and university, because for me, that's really kind of cut back on the amount I needed to do at the end, because I have all of my notes ready and I've already kind of memorized it. Like, as Nada said, you do forget kind of by the time you get to the real thing, but as you then reread it again, it comes back to you a lot quicker than it would have. So I definitely think to anyone who's listening and is quite struggling with that, if you have got time, try and make creative study posters or things like that, just to really make it more enjoyable, and then it will definitely benefit you at the end as well.
Nayantara, what does working smarter look like through your perspective?
Yeah, I think I agree with both Nana and Lauren that working throughout the entire year, breaking up the work so that you don't have to cram everything at the end is really important, just because cramming will help you remember something for maybe 2 or 3 days max. If you actually need to use that information, or if you would just like to remember that information for your life or later on, you need to study it over intervals and you need to repeat it. So repeating it and on one day and then a week later revisiting that content for at least 2, 3, 4 repetitions, just reading it over and over a longer period to remember it for years to come, not just for an exam. And I think what's really important for me is to realize that I like to be in I think it's called like a flow state. I'm not sure what the exact word is, but I've really, especially now when we're studying remotely, I try to not wake up and sit at my desk, in the sense that I do wake up and then I end up sitting at my desk before I do anything else. But like, I try to not make studying my day and breaks the time I take outside of my day for something else. I try to think of my day as the break, and then I set like chunks of study time, if that makes sense. So even if I'm studying for 4 hours at a time, that is a portion of studying within a day, not a portion of break within a study. Because I think I need to differentiate the time I am at my desk from the rest of my life. And during that time, I need to really focus on actively learning. So if I am feeling like I've been sitting at my desk for 4 or 5 hours and I cannot get any more information I can't actually understand and like digest the information that that I'm reading or I'm watching on a lecture, then I would rather, even if I'm short on time, even if this is one time that I've left it to the last minute, I would still take a break, go for a walk, and come back and then be fully focused when I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And I think it's also really important for me to, sometimes I catch myself getting into these like tunnels of just passively taking notes while I'm watching a lecture or while I'm reading. And it's really important for me to like set questions before I read a paragraph and then read the entire paragraph and then just take the notes on the answer to the most important questions instead of, as I'm reading, kind of copying down all the information or even just highlighting the information passively. I think like making that switch has been really helpful, to not get very tired and take a long time doing notes that are not really important.
Really incredible. The three of you together, these tips are really incredible, from learning how to prepare for what is going to come, not just studying, as reading ahead, going and attending your lectures, listening, not listening passively, really listening with the intent, understanding what you're going in for by reading ahead, and then creating note-taking methods, using creativity, making it fun, bringing in an element of fun, staying focused on the goal, reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And I like this idea of changing your mindset and empowering yourself with knowing studying is not my life. It's parts of my bigger picture. And I'm going to fit it into the parts of my day that I want to be fitting it into. So that kind of empowerment from where I'm watching and listening really sounds like I've made this choice. I'm doing this because I know the value of what I'm doing and I'm going to make it work for me. Would you say that these study smarter tips make you feel more in control of your situation? Or do you think that you're just using them as a life raft to get you through the challenges? Lauren, let's start with you.
I feel like it is a little bit of both, actually, because I do enjoy it and I do think it's really helping me get towards my goal. But then at the same time, I have had to, over many years of studying, really try to find what works best for me that can get me through. Because if I'm not doing things that are working effectively for me, then it does add even more to the stress that I have anyway. So yeah, definitely, I would say it's both there. It's kind of is almost like I'm doing these things to really help me hang on and get me through and make me feel better about all of the stress and university life, especially at the moment during the pandemic, it's been quite tough. So yeah, definitely, and I really, really agree with what everybody else has said as well.
Nayantara, is empowerment helping you through it? Or are these strategies just kind of like helping you stay above the water and keep you surviving through these moments?
Yeah, I think I definitely, I like to be in a position where I don't feel like I'm constantly like catching up or trying to hold on, or where I'm on top of my work in a way that I can kind of be flexible. And studying smarter helps with that. But I also think it helps with reflecting about my goals. So I've been trying to get away from this habit of just pushing myself to do something because I promised myself I would do it when I was younger, or, to constantly kind of reflect on whether my goals are still my goals, whether I really want that. And also that I can have multiple goals in life and that I can kind of change my goals as I grow up. And I think studying smarter and kind of being flexible about what I'm learning helps me to re-examine my goals every once in a while, and not just if it's not really give up on something if it's too hard, but think about whether is this what I imagined? Is this what I still want? And having that flexibility to kind of change when I'm not like drowning in stress.
So important, isn't it, to stay on top of it? But there's so many sacrifices we have to make, or you have to make as a young person to stay on top. Would you say that you have to say no to friends and to parties and to social gatherings to stay on top and stay ahead? Nada, how about let's start with you this time?
Okay, no, I think it's important to have some time of your own. You have time, you have some time to say it's okay. I don't study all the time. I don't study 24/7. I still have time to enjoy myself, go out with my friends, or even go as well as I can. And then I have to return to my duties or my two goals or my two to the path that I have drawn to myself. And of course, it's I have to change my goals. Um, Goals are okay to be changeable. There's a fine tuning when you grow up or when you mature, you have to set other priorities. So you always have to adjust these things in order to.
Not to be fixed on this idea of what we think we want, and to allow ourselves that kind of flexibility, as you said, to change your goals if you need to. Lauren, do you have to say a lot of no's and I can't make it to friends and social gatherings in order to stay on top of your studies?
I have, if I'm ever kind of very close to a deadline and falling a bit behind, but I tend not to allow that to happen. But as I did say earlier, kind of the way that stress manifests with me is to make me feel quite ill. And that leads me to actually have to say no to social gatherings and things because I actually need that time to rest, which is something that I have had to do quite a bit recently. And people are very, very understanding of it, as they know kind of that's how I react to stress in that way. But it doesn't tend to be because of the work, it tends to be because of the stress. But it's still kind of a similar thing. But I do, it's not all year round, it tends to just be near the end. And I think understanding friends like really know what you're going through, and I definitely give people a ring anyway, and they always want to check up on me anyway. So I think a couple of weeks of that and having a rest, then I'll get back into kind of being able to see people again, definitely.
Nayantara, what's it like over at your end? Do you have to say lots of no's, I can't make it, to stay on top of your studies?
Yeah, I really like what Nada said. I think a couple of questions back, or from multiple questions about balance. And I think for me, being on top of it, if I could like describe it in one word, it would be, or in one phrase, it would just mean being really in tune with myself and my needs. So being on top of my schoolwork to reduce stress, but also being on top of what I need as a person. And if I feel like to relax one day, social interaction is not the best way to do that, then I would rather say no, even to not study, but just watch Netflix. Or on another day, I would say no to a social gathering and actually study, because I feel like getting rid of the stressor would make me less stressed. So I think it really just depends on, do you need to see is it going to be seeing your friends, or is it going to be getting some things ticked off the to-do list, or is it going to be reading a book in bed? What is going to make you feel more at calm and happy in the moment, and in the moment, but also in the long term? So finding a balance between all of those things.
So I'm a parent and I'm listening in on this conversation. And in a position of representing parents right now, one of the questions I'm sure moms and dads would want to ask you is, how can I help my child through this really stressful time of exams? What would your top 3 tips be for parents? Let's start with Nada.
I think you can support them. My family support me usually in my exam period. They just leave me alone because they know I have a lot of things to be done. You need 3 tips, right? Yeah, okay. It's okay when they say they need to go to I go to the gym before an exam, or I go shopping, and I go shopping with my mother. Usually this type of shopping before an exam is with my mother, because she understands that it's okay, I can manage my time, and I can have some free time to do anything. So family support is important. And my mom usually cook for me, or she just makes sure that I eat my lunch or I eat my breakfast, because she knows I don't have time to go to the kitchen and do my own meal. I watch Netflix for them before an exam. It's good, but not the night of the exam. Yeah, it can be 2 days before an exam or something. Not it's night. What else? I guess that's all for me.
Support, you know, let me do something other than my study. It's okay to go to the gym or just take me to the mall and make sure that I eat well. So, you know, keep that food coming and keep me hydrated. Lauren, how about you? Top 3 tips for a parent wanting to support their child?
I really, really agree with that as well. So my first one would be to kind of understand what the pressure your child is under. So I think it's really important to actually ask them, like, how many exams have you got? Like, are you keeping on top of it? And kind of how are you feeling about it? Because I think that there can be sometimes your parent won't actually realize how much work you've got to do and how intense those exams are. And they might be like, oh, can you help me out and do something? Or can you clean this for me? And because they don't know that you're actually in a really stressful place, and you don't want to say, oh no, I'm too busy, you go and do that, but really that's causing you a lot of stress and you don't feel like you have time. But I think it's hard unless the parent kind of knows exactly what stress you're under. So I think definitely asking about that, and definitely what pressures are there. I would say 100% again, like Nada says as well, just like make sure that they're eating. So for me, I'm the exact same. I will go like a whole day, maybe like I'll have a bit of breakfast and I'll miss lunch and then work through right until dinner, because I am working and I don't even want to face stepping away for 20 minutes or a bit short, but I don't even want to even 5 minutes to cook myself food. I'd rather just carry on working. So definitely making sure that they're eating as well. And then just to remind like your child, this is something that I am really grateful that my parents do, is that no matter what, that you will be very proud of them, that no matter what grade they get, and that they know that you're working really hard. And even if they can see that you might not be, that's because you need a rest, and that they appreciate that you're really working hard, and no matter what the outcome is, that they're proud of you. And there's always other options if you don't get the grades that you want. I think hearing that from your parents just really takes that stress away, knowing that no matter what happens, they'll still be there for you, and then they'll still really support you. Those would be my top 3.
Nayantara, top 3 tips for a parent.
I think I would actually again agree completely with Nada and Lauren. I think, yeah, it's funny because we all mentioned it, but food is a really big deal. I think like the happiness I feel when I see my door open with a plate, with my mom with a plate of cut up fruit or something, I think that's really, really helpful. I think the cut up fruit is like a universal thing probably, but that's something that always is really nice. Also kind of trusting, if you think that the child doesn't know what is best for them at that moment with the stress, if you think they're overworking themselves, or even if you think they're maybe not stressed enough, also maybe nudging, but also trusting that they do know what is best for them is a very good thing. I think sometimes even if they're not looking after themselves the way they should, pushing too much, especially in a time when they're already stressed, can be kind of even more stressful on the child. And I think so, yeah, so just trusting and understanding them. And then I really like what Lauren said about just asking about how many exams they have, what classes they're taking. It's really nice to just know that somebody else is aware of your to-do list. And it's also, that goes, I think, for parents, if you live, even if you live or if you don't live with your parents and your family, but also whoever you're living with, whoever you're around a lot of the time, just communicating what your schedule looks like, and how much energy you have to give to them at that moment, with other things, with house help and all of that stuff, is really important.
Such great tips, such great insights. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I could talk to the three of you for hours, but I know that you need to get back to your studies, and we are calling in from different parts of the world. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to everyone watching. I hope that this conversation helps you to understand what stress, anxiety looks like for your child, and some great tips were offered to parents and young people into how they can be working smarter, and also how we can be supporting our children through this exam stress. A big thank you, Nayantara, for calling in from the US, and Nada from Egypt, and Lauren from the UK. I really appreciate that you've taken time away for us. And we'll see you all soon at our next strong interview. Thank you, everyone, for watching.